नमस्कार दोस्तों, राजधानी दिल्ली में आज रक्षा मंत्रालय की ओर से एक अहम प्रेस वार्ता का आयोजन किया गया, जिसमें DGMO लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राजीव घई, एयर मार्शल AK भारती, वाइस एडमिरल AN प्रमोद और मेजर जनरल SS शारदा ने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर से जुड़े कई महत्वपूर्ण खुलासे किए। एयर मार्शल AK भारती ने मुरीदके स्थित आतंकी ठिकानों पर भारतीय वायुसेना की सटीक मिसाइल स्ट्राइक के पहले और बाद के वीडियो सार्वजनिक करते हुए बताया कि यह ऑपरेशन पूरी तरह आतंकियों को निशाना बनाकर किया गया था। उन्होंने स्पष्ट किया कि हमारा मकसद पाकिस्तान की सेना या किसी अन्य संस्था से लड़ना नहीं था, बल्कि हमारा उद्देश्य सिर्फ और सिर्फ आतंकवाद का खात्मा था।
Orientating. Just go back one slide. Okay. Please have a look at this red building. The series of buildings out here, and this empty ground. Next. If you relate, the empty ground is here, and you see this is the first weapon that is impacting. This is the impact point number 1 on Muridke training camp with our precision guided weapon on early morning 7. Next please. Keep your eyes glued for the second weapon coming in and the second impact on the selected target point. Next slide please. Third weapon, third impact. Continue. And fourth weapon, fourth impact. So through these targeted and precision targeting, we addressed the target at Muridke, which was the training infrastructure. Can you hear me? All right. Okay. Now we go to the next target, which is the Bhavalpur training camp. Next slide, please. Okay, just wait. So the effect, if you see, the impact point, if I can point out, this is the impact point. The ammunition has gone through the roof and it has created a blast inside, the photographs of which you would have, all of you would have seen. And the red building, after that there was this double-story building. It has been completely decimated by our precision targeting. Next please. The target system, which was in the north, a series of buildings. I will show you how it looked. Next. Completely destroyed by our precision targeting. Now coming to Bhavalpur, this is the target complex that we are dealing with, a fairly large target complex. So we had to carefully choose the points that we needed to address, which were high value and which would meet our stated objectives of eliminating the terrorists. I would like to draw your attention to this red canopy, and in relation to that, I would cover the targets. One target system is a series of buildings here, other one here, and other one out here. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how the building looked after the impact of the weapon, and orientation in relation to this red canopy you can see here. Next please. Before, next, and after. The roofs have completely collapsed. Next. This is the target system. Next. Precision targeting, and we have achieved our objectives here. Next. All right. So that was what we did on the 7th. Our objective was to address these two terrorist camps, and that we did with precision. And thereafter, we maintained a robust air defense posture, because remember, our objective was to target the terrorists and terrorist infrastructure, not any other infrastructure, not the Pakistani military, not the Pakistani any other infrastructure. So that is what we have maintained on the 7th of May.
उन्होंने यह भी बताया कि 7 मई की शाम से लेकर 10 मई तक पाकिस्तान की ओर से यूएवी ड्रोन और यूसीएवी के माध्यम से भारत के सैन्य और नागरिक ठिकानों पर कई हमलों की कोशिश हुई, जिन्हें हमारी अत्याधुनिक हार्ड किल और सॉफ्ट किल ड्रोन रक्षा प्रणाली ने कुशलता से नाकाम किया। हालांकि कुछ ड्रोन जमीन पर गिरे, लेकिन उनमें कोई बड़ा नुकसान नहीं हुआ।
So I just covered what happened on the night of 7th and 8th. What we found that on the night of 8th and 9th, starting as early as 22:30 hours, our cities had a mass raid of drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, UCAVs, starting right from Srinagar, going down right up to Nalia. It was a mass raid in waves and it was relentless. However, we were prepared, and our air defense preparedness ensured that there is no damage on ground or to any of the intended targets that the enemy might have planned for. The difference between 7th night and 8th night was that on 7th night he sent in his Yeha class of UAVs. However, these UAVs can go some distance. They are armed. However, on the 8th, less numbers of armed UCAVs were there or UAVs were there, and more numbers of quadcopters, maybe for surveillance or just for harassment of civilians. This continued till midnight. Our air defense preparedness ensured that there was no damage on the ground, either to the military installations or to the civilians. However, the enemy had yet again shown that he wanted to up the ante and he wanted a fight, and we were up to the task. In a measured and calibrated response, we once again targeted his military installations, which included his SAM sites at Malirkant. This also included his surveillance radar sites at Lahore and close to Gujranwala. These were suitably addressed, and thereafter his drone attacks continued even till morning, which we countered, and during the daytime there was some respite. Here I would like to bring out another aspect. What we found was that while the drone attacks were being launched from somewhere close to Lahore, enemy had allowed his civilian aircraft to also continue to fly out of Lahore. Not only his own aircraft, but international passenger aircraft, which is quite insensitive, and we had to exercise extreme caution, even at the cost of some tactical disadvantage, to ensure that there is no damage to any of the civilian aircraft. And this was also brought out in our press briefing during the day. So I will now hand over to my colleague to cover the events of 9th onwards. However, what we saw in the evening of 7th of May, we were saturated with a raid of Pakistani unmanned aerial vehicles and small drones. And these came in waves in our civilian areas, over our military installations, and all of them were successfully intercepted. Few of them did manage to land. However, there was not much damage that they did, and we have our robust counter US hard kill and soft kill systems which did the job. However, the difference here was that we had targeted the terrorists. The adversary now has targeted our civilians and the military infrastructure, so it had to be responded to. So in a quick and calibrated response, that very night we stuck their radar installations at Lahore and close to Gujranwala, the LYT installation, to indicate to him that we are ready, yet we do not want to escalate. Our fight was with the terrorists and not with the Pakistani military establishment.
लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राजीव घई ने बताया कि 8 और 9 मई की रात को पाकिस्तान की ओर से एयर स्पेस उल्लंघन करते हुए ड्रोन और विमानों से सैन्य प्रतिष्ठानों को निशाना बनाने की नाकाम कोशिश की गई। उन्होंने कहा 9 और 10 मई की रात को फिर से एयरफील्ड्स और अहम लॉजिस्टिक बेस को टारगेट किया गया, लेकिन इंडियन एयरफोर्स और आर्मी एयर डिफेंस ने बेहद शानदार तरीके से हर प्रयास को विफल कर दिया।
It indeed is a difficult time that we have to come here like this and brief you. We could have done without this, but we had no choice. As the DGMO has detailed, the event was precipitated by the dastardly act at Pahalgam. The sequence of events have already been detailed. We carefully selected the targets, and out of the 9 selected targets, the target systems that were given to the Indian Air Force were the notorious training camps at Bhavalpur and Muridke, these being further from the international boundary. Through critical target system analysis, we analyzed what was to be done to annihilate these targets and plan to engage these targets with precision air-to-surface guided munitions so as to avoid collateral damage. The modalities of planning process I will not go through at this instant. However, what I would like to show you is the results that we achieved through our targeted airstrikes. Could I have the second slide, please? Yeah, change, please. Okay. This is what the terror infra at Muridke looks like. If you see, north is as indicated, and to the right is east, where the international boundary lies. Could we have the next slide, please? Orientating. Just go back one slide. Okay. Please have a look at this red building, the series of buildings out here, and this empty ground. Next. If you relate, the empty ground is here, and you see this is the first weapon that is impacting. This is the impact point number 1 on Muridke training camp with our precision guided weapon on early morning 7. Next, please. Keep your eyes glued for the second weapon coming in and the second impact on the selected target point. Next slide, please.
वाइस एडमिरल एन प्रमोद ने 22 अप्रैल को जम्मू कश्मीर के पहलगाम में टूरिस्ट पर हुए आतंकी हमले के बाद नौसेना की कार्रवाई की जानकारी दी। उन्होंने बताया कि हमारी कैरियर बैटल ग्रुप सबमरीन और एयर एस्टेस को 96 घंटे के भीतर समुद्र में तैनात कर दिया गया और हमने युद्ध स्तर की हथियार परीक्षण व अभ्यास भी किए। यह साबित करता है कि हम पूरी तरह तैयार हैं।
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the aftermath of the cowardly attacks on innocent tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistani-sponsored terrorists on 22nd April, the Indian Navy's Carrier Battle Group, surface forces, submarines and aviation assets were immediately deployed at sea with full combat readiness in concert with the joint operation plan of the Indian Defence Forces. You may be aware that we tested and refined tactics and procedures at sea during multiple weapon firings in the Arabian Sea within 96 hours of the terrorist attack. The aim was to revalidate our crew, armament, equipment, and platform readiness to deliver various ordnance on selected targets precisely. Thereafter, our forces remained forward deployed in the Northern Arabian Sea in a dissuasive and deterrent posture with full readiness and capacity to strike select targets at sea and on land, including Karachi at time of our choosing. The forward deployment of the Indian Navy compelled Pakistani naval and air units to be in a defensive posture, mostly inside harbors or very close to the coast, which we monitored continuously. The Indian Navy maintained seamless maritime domain awareness throughout the duration and was entirely aware of the location and movement of Pakistani units. In effect, we had and continue to have good battle space transparency using our maritime domain awareness grid. As you are aware, our response has been measured, proportionate, non-escalatory, and responsible from day one. Accordingly, the calibrated approach considered all options, including the ability of the Indian Navy for offensive action from and at sea. As part of this escalation control mechanism, the application of force by the Navy was planned in a synchronized manner in coordination with the Army and Air Force, the highlight being teams from the three services working closely in an integrated manner. Along with the kinetic actions by the Indian Army and Indian Air Force, the overwhelming operational edge of Indian Navy at sea contributed towards Pakistan's urgent request for a ceasefire yesterday. As we speak, Indian Navy remains deployed at sea in a credible deterrent posture to respond decisively to any inimical action by Pakistan or Pakistan-based terrorists. Thank you. Samno Varna, Jai Hind. Now I'll hand over to Director General Military Operations for further proceedings.
प्रेस वार्ता में यह भी बताया गया कि 12 मई को दोनों देशों के डीजीएमओ के बीच वार्ता तय गई थी, लेकिन पाकिस्तान की ओर से समझौते के उल्लंघन करते हुए आज सुबह फिर से फायरिंग और ड्रोन घुसपैठ की घटनाएं हुई। लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राजीव घई ने सख्त लहजे में कहा, यदि ये उल्लंघन दोहराए जाते हैं तो भारत की प्रतिक्रिया और भी अधिक सख्त और निर्णायक होगी। सेना प्रमुख ने हमारी सेना को हर आवश्यक कार्रवाई के लिए पूरी छूट दे दी है।
Ladies and gentlemen, on the 10th of May, in the morning, even as we were getting into a huddle to wargame the events of the previous night, a routine exercise, I received a message on hotline from my counterpart in Pakistan seeking my willingness to communicate. Since our initial aim was to strike at terror camps, and all our actions in the subsequent days were in response to the intrusions and violations by the Pakistan Air Force and its army, it was decided that I would indeed speak with my counterpart. You are already aware, I've seen it being covered on national television, that my communication with the Pak DGMO was conducted at 15:35 hours yesterday and resulted in cessation of cross-border firing and air intrusions by either side with effect from 1700 hours 10th of May, after he proposed that we cease hostilities. We also decided to further speak on the 12th of May, that's tomorrow, at 1200 hours, to discuss the modalities that would enable the longevity of this understanding. However, disappointingly, and must I add, expectedly, it took only a couple of hours for the Pakistan Army to violate these arrangements by cross-border and across the line of control firing followed by drone intrusions across the expanse of the Western Front through last night and in the early hours of the morning today. These violations were responded to robustly and dealt with as they must be. We have earlier today sent another hotline message to my counterpart highlighting these violations of the understanding between the DGMOs on the 10th of May and our firm and clear intent to respond to these fiercely and punitively, if repeated tonight, subsequently, or later. In this regard, I must inform all of you that the Chief of Army Staff has earlier today conducted a security review and has granted full authority to our Army commanders for counter actions in the kinetic domain in case of any violation by Pakistan.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर अब सिर्फ एक जवाबी कार्यवाही नहीं बल्कि है एक कड़ा संदेश है कि भारत अब आतंकवाद को जड़ से खत्म करने की नीति पर अडिग है।